Emmanuel Macron was very quick to underline what he sees as the issues of principle raised by the beheading of a teacher outside his school in a town near Paris. One of our fellow citizens was assassinated today because he was teaching. He was teaching pupils about freedom of expression, he said. The Élysée later announced a ceremony of national homage to the murdered man. Nabila Ramdani is a French journalist and commentator. Good morning.
Good morning, Edward.
Tell us a little bit, if you could, of what we now know about the events leading up to this terrible killing.
Well, the first thing it's essential to say is that we're having this discussion because of a barbaric terrorism incident, and an anti-terrorist inquiry is in full swing, and the authorities are making great efforts to make information available as quickly as possible. A number of arrests have been made, and these are mainly of family members of the Russian-born killer Abulay Anzorov, an 18-year-old who is from a Chechen background. And meanwhile, marches will be held today in commemoration of Samuel Paty, the teacher who was murdered in such horrific circumstances. But all this comes against the background of a trial that is being held in Paris in relation to the 2015 Charlie Hebdo attacks, when 12 staff members of the magazines were killed by two gunmen. And this latest gruesome incident also comes in the context of two people being stabbed in a knife attack outside the former offices of the magazine at the opening of the Charlie Hebdo trial. And the main suspect was an 18-year-old man of Pakistani origin who was arrested by police.
And this teacher had been using some of the cartoons that Charlie Hebdo published in his classes about freedom of expression.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the difficulty of discussing the issues that this throws up is, of course, that our starting point is pure barbarity, an utterly evil act that will be condemned by all decent people, including millions of Muslims who live in France and indeed in other parts of the world. And pretty much everything else currently pales into insignificant when we consider the depth of evil involved in the killing of the teacher. But, you know, the national homage that President Macron announced, like the ongoing Charlie Hebdo trial, will be rightly used as a chance to express compassion and indeed demand justice for the victims of terrorism. But extremists will also relish it as a chance to spread collective guilt. They will say that the parents and indeed school children who objected to the Charlie Hebdo cartoons are all terrorist sympathizers, established politicians, and not just those in Marine Le Pen's national rally, are already saying as much. And if we can look beyond the terrorism, and I appreciate that this is very hard at times like these, many Muslims are simply asking that hate laws, and not blasphemy laws, but hate laws, of which there are many in France, are simply implemented to protect them and their children from hateful material, be it inflammatory broadcasts from racists or images which depict the Prophet as a leering fool with no clothes on. I mean, this is, you know...
Sorry, just because this is a very specifically French thing, I think, that the classes that he was teaching, which are about things like secularism, secularity in the French democratic system, they are compulsory in schools, aren't they? They have to teach these things.
Well, you know, there is, of course, a place for teaching free speech and in the French curriculum. There's nothing unusual there. But unfortunately, we have now reached the stage when Muslims are somehow expected to accept being portrayed as an underclass who have no place in modern France. And the Charlie Hebdo-style portrayal of sacred figures in Islam as being leering cretins obsessed with bombs is typical of this. And such malicious caricatures would not be allowed in Britain, just as portrayals of black politicians as monkeys eating bananas would not be allowed in Britain. And yet this is exactly the kind of obscene material that Charlie Hebdo publishes. And yet somewhere we have now reached the stage in France when such portrayals are held up as noble testaments to the secular state. It really is very sinister. There are, in fact, many hate laws in France, but they have mysteriously been made redundant when Charlie Hebdo-style free speech is championed.
But clearly there is extraordinarily strong public feeling about this, isn't there? I mean, you mentioned the vigils all over the country, the national homage plan by the Élysée, which is obviously intended to express sympathy about what happened, but also to express solidarity with what this teacher was doing.
Well, absolutely. I mean, President Macron himself, he announced national homage, and he specifically said that it will be held to pay respect to the victim on a day fixed that will be coordinated with the family. He went further, saying that the attack was one against the Republic and its values, and the battle was existential. He added that the terrorists will not succeed and they will not divide the country. And this message was broadly the same across the political divide. But I think the point we have to bear in mind is that tolerant, decent people, that is to say the vast majority of humanity, can try and deal with this growing antipathy towards Islam in a civilized fashion.
Nabila Ramdani, forgive me, we must leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for joining us.